Bo, lover of data and carbs. In her free time, she likes to binge watch TV until it's almost 2 a.m. in the morning, then regret it because she has to work the next day. Her favorite activities include chugging coffee, running queries, and pretending to enjoy running, the non-query kind.
Hello, everyone. So I tend to do most of my TV binging on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Back in March, I took a vacation in Europe, and my sleep schedule was honestly so out of whack that I slept like a normal person. And then Microsoft's Build conference was in May. GDPR was taking effect in May. I helped my parents move to Seattle in May. And so May was just like a little bit more stressful than usual. Just by simply tracking my sleep every night, I'm able to correlate my terrible life choices and remember some major events, all without any detailed journal entries. We've come as far as to be able to use numbers to represent parts of our reality, but really it's not the real thing. No one would be interested in it if it wasn't for all the stories we're able to tell with it and the meanings attached to them. So I was binge watching the season 5 of the show Silicon Valley. I'm not going to spoil anything just in case you haven't seen it. But basically what happened was data and telemetry ended up saving the day. Guilfoyle coded a diagnostics tool to help them consume the data that they were already collecting, detect the problem, which led to a solution. So 2 things crossed my mind. One, this is so relevant. I literally just got an email about how this talk proposal was accepted, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna talk about this now. And 2, okay, how is this not a plot hole? They are a super disruptive startup company, but they don't have any sort of monitoring solution, right? They're counting their user signups, but like that's about it. And even then, they don't even have a way to consume the minimal amount of data that they are collecting. It's absolutely ridiculous. So it's a plot hole. And to confirm that it was a plot hole, I did what any reasonable person would do. I read 10 reviews of that Silicon Valley episode, and not a single one of them mentioned this plot hole. But it's okay. The point I'm trying to make is that they used their data and was able to derive a story. And that story was, there was a problem, and we need to fix it. And actually, spoiler alert, they did fix it like they always do, because they were monitoring their solution. Now, it's not a major point in the story, but it is a point that I noticed. The APM market is projected to reach $8.7 billion by the year 2023. So I think everyone at this point can accept the fact that it's really important to monitor your web app, your regular iOS app, your server infrastructure, etc. But the question we're trying to answer here today is, how can we use monitoring solutions to help us monitor more than just the health of our app? Because we can do so much more. We can use it to make business decisions, decide on what to do next. We can use it to find customer pain points, and we can use it to define the success. And do all of this at any time of the day, because sometimes you're procrastinating and you didn't finish a presentation and no one wants to talk to you at 2 a.m. in the morning, right? I think I was super fortunate to start my career at Microsoft on a very data-centric team. I worked on a product called Application Insights. The team was actually an APM solution. So we tracked everything, and everyone knew how to query, and it was basically second nature. And so when I joined my current team, App Center, the telemetry was definitely there, but we were definitely collecting it, but it wasn't really complete, and it wasn't really pretty, and it wasn't really easy to query. I'm currently on a team of people that's trying to fix that right now. So today, I want to share with you some of the stuff that I learned from being on a very data-centric team, and also the stuff that I learned from trying to help my current team get to the same level of data awesomeness as my last team. And I want to do so by answering these 3 questions. What questions can you answer with telemetry? How do you easily use your telemetry? And how do you care about telemetry? First things first, though, I don't know if you noticed, sometimes I use the words telemetry and data interchangeably, but what I really mean is the automated collection of data, as well as the data itself. Now on to the first question. What questions can you answer with telemetry? And the answer is quite a lot. right? You have your basic questions like, how many users are signing up on a day-to-day basis? How many active, engaged, dedicated users do I have? What's my month-over-month growth? How many of my users are churning or bouncing? But you can actually go in so much deeper and find answers to questions to be able to pinpoint actions to take. For example, I'm going to be using App Center. All right, here is our test beacon where you can upload tests and run them on actual devices. So here is basically like you can have an overview of your test. Some of them pass, some of them fail, some of them passed or failed. And so some of the questions I can ask is, how many of my users are clicking into failed? How many are clicking into passed? And how many are clicking into test passed or failed? So I'm just going to click into that. And if they do click into it, how much deeper are they going in? Are they actually viewing these screenshots that we're taking of the tests that they're running? And if there's an error, are they more likely to click on it and going into it? And then finally, how many people are reaching this page? Now, those questions I just asked can give you some very, very basic numbers. But from those numbers, you can answer some really interesting questions, like what's my user behavior? Are they more likely to click on a test that's passed or a test that's failed? And also, we can decide on what to do next. So if a lot of users are reaching this page, then maybe it's a good investment for us to improve the experience on this page. However, if not a lot of users are reaching this page, then maybe it's not the best investment we could be making right now. Another thing we did was we released the feature auto provisioning. And some of the questions that I currently have for this is, now that we've put in resources and developed it, how useful is it? Are users actually using it, right? Was this a good investment for us to make? Now, I want you to take all of these web scenarios that I just gave and think about the apps that you're building. What questions can you ask to help, and what things can you understand about your business or your users? Now, I'm going to continue my presentation. And on a demo app. So this is a demo app called Smart Hotel. From it, you can do a bunch of stuff, including booking a room and using your phone as a room key. Questions I would be asking is, how many users are using the key feature versus how many people are booking their rooms through the phone? And so with that, I can see, right now this card entry is just a functional MVP. Does it make sense for me to go in and invest even more to be able to make this user experience a little bit better? And all these questions can be answered with data and tracking telemetry. Now, you could go into your app and track absolutely everything, but you could also be missing a few things if you do that. The best way to make sure you can answer absolutely everything is to define your questions, and then look at the related scenarios relating to those questions. So that way, you can make sure you're tracking all of those scenarios and tracking the telemetries relating to those scenarios. Now, as I mentioned earlier, our team is currently trying to fix up our telemetry. We're actually really, really good at tracking a lot of things, but there really lacks a standard, which makes correlating events really hard. Tracking telemetry doesn't necessarily equal it's easily usable. So right here is a query that I wrote to look at our daily signups from our GitHub PR builds integration. And a few things to note here. There's two different types of user IDs. And this just adds complexity to the queries. And once the query starts getting longer and more complicated, it starts getting really confusing. And depending on the telemetry solution you use, make sure you plan out a standard so you don't have to do complicated joins between events because certain fields are missing and other fields are inconsistent. So here I'm still in presentation mode. All right, so here is a query I'm going to run to look at my user signups. A few things I want you to notice. The user ID is called user ID, and it's within this custom dimensions property. Now I'm going to look at an event called app created. Okay, that didn't give me anything, so I'm going to change that up a little bit. Nope, still nothing. Right, okay, so I did that to prove a point because the naming conventions was a little confusing. I work with this data on a day-to-day basis, and because we're tracking like hundreds of events, it's still difficult for me to remember exactly how the events are written. So if you have a standard way of writing it, it's a lot easier. You don't have to be like, oh no, what did I do wrong? All right, another thing I want you to notice is, remember how for the user signups, the user event was inside a custom dimension? But in here, user ID is actually called user authenticated ID, and it's outside of the custom dimension. So with these inconsistencies, it's just, again, adds more complexity to when you want to know something. So if you can imagine, if you have a iOS app and a Mac app and a web app all doing pretty much the same thing, and you want to be able to correlate one user throughout the entire thing to understand what they're doing, if you have such inconsistencies, imagine the queries you're writing. You have to account for all these difficult joins. So it's probably better if you just define the properties and naming conventions ahead of time. Another thing that's really good to do is defining the queries themselves, because if you have a way to say, this is what it means for signups, everyone can agree on it, it's super consistent no matter who's querying on it, and also no one's going to question the validity of your queries if, you know, everyone already agreed on it. All right, so going back. So here's what you do to make your telemetry really easy to use. You should standardize the names and make it descriptive. You should standardize the properties, and you should standardize the definitions. So pretty much just standardize everything. Okay, so you have the events, you know what questions you want answered, you standardize your events, you wrote some queries, you're all good, right? No. Why? Well, you see, it's helpful to do some queries every once in a while, but it's actually more important to be kind of constantly on the know. And sometimes you discover answers to questions you weren't really even asking. The best way is to integrate with a service that comes with a dashboard, or build a dashboard yourself with like the APIs that they provide, or pump data into like a BI dashboard service. All right, so looking at this, this is an app that me and my coworkers built, and we are running the game of Assassins for the interns for Microsoft this summer. And one thing I want you to note here is that on May 16th, there was a huge spike because that was when the first game started. There's a continuously growing number of active users, and we expect to see another spike in about, actually tomorrow, because that's when the next game will start. And so even though there's very basic data here, you can actually tell a lot from just being able to monitor it. This shows a view over time and gives you insight and direction. Because if you're doing something, making improvements to your app or adding new features, if it's making everything worse, then you should probably go fix it. But if it's making things better, keep doing that, but it's good still to have confirmation. All right, so using telemetry gives you the ability to get almost immediate feedback from all of your users without actually talking to all of your users. Continuous monitoring is an important, integral part of the mobile development process that puts users kind of in the front and center. So all of this helps you understand your data enough to be able to tell a story and make sense of it all. The best thing you can do as a creator is understanding your users' needs and understanding your users themselves. So it doesn't really matter what story you're trying to tell. The point is having enough data to be able to tell a compelling story, make a case, and be able to back it up by data. Now for me, even with this much data, I know that if I wanted to improve my life, I should probably stop binge watching TV on a weeknight, or like stop procrastinating like I did on this presentation. All right, thank you so much. If you guys want to talk to us, we are App Center. We're outside in that booth, like right outside there. If you guys want to talk to me about data or telemetry, I'm really happy to talk to you about that as well. Thank you.